Now, onto today's topic. Are Africans too comfortable with the concept of word slave? What is actually word slave? What is the definition of it? Well, if you go to Wikipedia, the term word slave is a term used to describe a situation where a person's entire livelihood depends on wages or a salary, especially when the wages are low, conditions are poor, and the person has little to no realistic chances of upward mobility. And upward mobility here, it's it's more like moving from one social class to another. Now, the term is often used to criticize the exploitation of labor and social stratification. Social stratification, if you look it up, it has this connotation of the way we kind of classify people based on money these days. For instance, you hear many people say, "Oh, we have the low class, we have the middle class, and we have the upper class." Now, it goes on to say, with the former seen primarily as an equal bargaining power between labor and capital, particularly when workers are paid comparatively low wages. The other article I read was from Near and Far, and it begs to ask the question, are you a wage slave? Now, you can see here from the excerpt, it says being a wage slave means you're stuck doing your job solely for the money. You cannot quit because leaving would have terrible consequences. In fact, they did a really good job putting this quadrant of 4 types of work and really trying to highlight the concept of wage slave. Now, if you look at this quadrant, at the first top of it, you'll see that you have the things that you like to do, the work, the job that you like to do. And the first one is like a hobby. A hobby is something that you love to do and no one is paying you for it. You know, if you're a musician, you can make songs, even if someone is not paying you to make songs, you know. And then you have a dream job where probably it's something that you have, you've started your own company. That's a dream job. Probably it's something that you have studied your whole life and you landed into this job and now you're being paid for it. It's one of those jobs that you really love and it's giving you so much fulfillment and happiness, such that even if someone came to give you more money, you'll be like, nah, I don't think so, thank you, right? And then down here now you have the jobs or the work that you do not like. And the first part is the drudgery kind of a job. Now, for instance, you cleaning the house, you doing the dishes, you doing laundry. Many people, if you ask them if they had an opportunity to just say no to these things, they'll be like, yeah, I don't want to do those things. But you have to do them and nobody's still gonna pay you money for it unless you're a professional, right? And the last part is really what we're focusing on today, which is the concept of wage slavery. And this is where you do not like the job. In fact, you probably go home every day crying to your husband, crying, alone, and being like, that boss is such a piece of, and you're so angry. It makes you so angry, but yet you feel like you're stuck in that kind of a situation where you need the money. Now, think about it. If you're actually employed, and these are some of the questions that I was asking initially, if your friends, your peers are employed, if you decided to just leave your job today because you hate it and you do not like the environment, probably it's toxic and it's not what you want to do, what impact would it have on your life? Now, there is no question many of you would probably be like, well, that means I'm losing my healthcare or my insurance. It means I'll no longer have a steady income every month. It means I'll not be certain if I can put a roof over my head, food, It means that I'll get confused who I am as a person. I don't have any social status. Many of us cling to these jobs because we draw all these things from these jobs. Now, it's almost like you're feeling trapped. You're in there just so that you can get all these benefits. Now, that highlights the definition of wage slave or wage slavery. Just think about it. This topic today is not meant to stir emotions and make you do to make you take unrealistic decisions, especially if you find yourself in this kind of a situation. But this topic today is for us to think critically about, if we had to do something different, then what is it that we would have chosen to do? If you want a different path, then how do you get to that different path? In fact, it is also for those of us who have quote unquote made it, and quote unquote say we have good careers, to really take us a moment of reflection and think about, what are some of our privileges and what is it that we can actually be able to do to go back to the community and do something different, not just for ourselves, but for those around us, and how, we want to live as a people. Now, I want to ask this question. What do you think are some of the factors that have led Africans to being comfortable with the concept of word slave, and is there room for us to forge a different path? I think there is, but we have to first address the inadequacies, and we have to look at the things we can change now. And I think the things that we can change now are things like Africa's education system, which we are yet to fully decolonize it. I think the education system is where most of us spend almost our entire lives and a huge amount of resources, going to school, studying, getting a piece of paper, and allowing this piece of paper to define who you're going to be in the society and your contributions to the society. It plays a huge role. So I think there's some real failures that we can account for and say, this is a failure on our part as Africans to fail to decolonize our education. It's just now that many of us are looking to find ways to tap into the indigenous knowledge, the indigenous culture, and have that be ingrained in our current education system. And I think that has robbed us of so much wealth that is already in our community that we do not see. And it seems like all these multinationals can see that opportunity, except for we as people. We just see ourselves as Africans as a population that we want to go through the system, get a piece of paper, and come and work for these companies. But these companies are formed by people. Think about it, And I know in schools they teach about entrepreneurship, but there is a very big difference when you're teaching about entrepreneurship in the modern day world versus entrepreneurship that is really geared towards building microeconomies within your community, looking at your culture, looking at your heritage, looking at the resources that you currently have, and using that as a source of inspiration or as a foundation for you to build more on that. That's what I'm talking about. And so if you look at Africa's education system, I think that is lacking. So I believe that we as a people, we have a real opportunity, if we want to change the course of action, to look at, for instance, if today you have little money and you say, I have a piece of land back home, I've learned about agriculture. Why can't I go back home and decide that I am going to start doing farming? You can keep your job that you're struggling in right now, but you can also diversify by having another source of income and starting to build microeconomies. And when these economies flourish and they are stable enough, then you can quit whatever it is and you can go into a situation where it's much more fulfilling for you and even the people around you. That's what I'm talking about. The other thing I wanted to talk about is being very intentional about raising young Pan-Africanists. This is something that I feel like a lot of the Gen Zs and a lot of the millennials, we didn't fully get this kind of an education where a lot of our parents came to tell us very clearly that, you can get educated. That is great. You can get all this, but you have to remember that you're African fast, that you're Kenyan fast, that you're Duruma fast, you're Mijikenda fast, that all these things matter and they define your existence. And that when you get that piece of paper, yes, you can get work, but you have to come and also do work within your community and really learn about who we are as a people and the essence of it and what it is that defines us, how we generations and generations have built and sustained our economies, and how you can come and build on this foundation to do even better. I feel like many of us have lacked this. And so as the millennials who are raising children, as Gen Z start to also have kids, I think it's something that we have to be very intentional about, so that we stop having this mentality of we as Africans, we look down upon ourselves and who we are as a people and what we have, but then we are really, really okay with looking outwardly towards the West and embracing their values, embracing their products, embracing everything. I think it's time we change this. And that will start by you and me actually taking the time to appreciate what it means to be a Pan-Africanist, and also being intentional about raising Pan-Africanists and giving the coming generation a chance to really understand what it means to be an African and the essence of it. The other thing I think is that we have fallen into this mentality of accepting a very shallow definition to success. Now, many of us look at each other and people have these nice posh suits, posh shoes, we drive these posh cars, and we have just looked at that and said, yeah, that is success. I say it's a shallow definition because you are accumulating wealth towards one person. And especially as accepting this concept of a billionaire, we have created this facade that many of us, if we do not attain this, then we are failures, right? And so many of us, even when you get like a nice job, it's like you devote your whole life towards that specific job. But who is the key beneficiary of your work? That is something I feel like many of us do not take a step back to look back and be like, well, I'm working all these hours. Sometimes my marriage has suffered. Sometimes my mental health has suffered. I've lost friends, but who is really benefiting? Who is the real billionaire? Who are you? Where is all the money going to? Many people forget that, for instance, if you drop dead today, and in as much as you are a hard worker and you are earning all this money, people will come to your funeral and people will bury you and you'll be forgotten because you did not leave any legacy behind. There's no generational wealth you actually bothered to create because you're so consumed by your sense of self and accumulating all these resources towards you and yourself. And now that you're gone, nobody cares. You don't matter. You's not important. It's as clear as that. And so I think we need to redefine what success is. Success is you building a legacy, working together with people around you within your community to look back and say, what is it that I can do to lift my people? What is it that I can do to really touch my community and touch people beyond me, beyond the sense of self, and looking outwardly? Because what you have is a privilege. And that privilege is not just to benefit you, it is to benefit many more. If we looked at this, even the whole idea of Pandora Papers and many of our African leaders trying to accumulate wealth and just putting it outside of Africa, it's madness. Think about it. What is the point of that? You're doing that when the people in your own country are lacking food, people are dying of famine. How can that be success? How can you look at that and be happy and smile with yourself? We need to change this mentality. It's also not sustainable. Look at the rate of suicide rates that are currently happening in Africa. Many of us have gone into debt just to sustain a lifestyle that we cannot even afford. It's just not realistic. I think many of us have been drunk, have gotten drunk. Many of us have gotten drunk in power. And I think it's time for us to really try and humble ourselves and think critically. How do I start building generational wealth? How do I appreciate generations and generations who have toiled so hard? Many of us understand that our grandparents, our great-grandparents, these are not generations that are far removed from us. These are generations just like you and me who toiled so hard, who are in way harder conditions than ours. People who had vast wealth, and suddenly the white settlers came in and they took all what they had just to benefit themselves. All that greed and power still continuing on today. And the biggest commodity of all was our people, you and me, like the way we are toiling so hard today to benefit multinationals and corporations. People like you and me, our ancestors were actually taken away, especially from Africa, to go and be sold into slavery. This is real. So today, don't look and be like, yeah, I have a little bit of money, I think I'm okay. No, there are people like you and me who paved the way for us, right? So we owe it to them to actually do something. We owe it to them to actually do something to lift our communities. So think about it. When everyone is toiling so hard, who are we toiling for? Are you really toiling for yourself and for your generation and for your community? Or are you stuck in this shallow definition of success and consumed by your sense of self? And you're actually into wage slavery, but you don't want to accept it. I think the power is in actually coming together to build microeconomies. Start buying from one another. Build microeconomies. For instance, in Kenya, did you know we do not have a locally made toothpaste? All our toothpaste is imported. Is it that we cannot make toothpaste? Something as basic as that? Oh, hell yeah, we can. But why aren't we doing that? Why are we just comfortable with working with corporations who are making toothpaste for us and enriching their pockets? I know it sounds very, very simple or sometimes complicated, but these things matter. We need to take a moment and reflect. If you're in a position of power, do not get drunk in that power. Look at how we can still come back as a community. Go back to the village, go back to the basics, and find ways to lift your community and your people, because that is where the real wealth is. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, cheers.